I think it's pretty common for people to think that they need to hire a contractor first and then possibly a designer. And I would say actually that's backwards. Welcome to the KHD podcast. Today we're going to talk about the range of professionals that you might speak to or need to speak to in order to get your project properly, legally, and structurally soundly over the finish line. Very often in our industry, homeowners will hire a contractor thinking that that's the first hire that they should make when they're planning a renovation. And it would seem obvious and it would seem quite simple, but I'm actually going to challenge that here, and I'll tell you why. Construction needs to follow design. If you don't understand the problem you're trying to solve and the solutions that you're going to integrate to remove the pain points in your home without creating new ones, then you shouldn't be starting construction. One of the other things that I have seen happen very often in our community is a contractor will get hired and asked to share design advice. Now, this is actually not fair to the contractor, because very often the contractor just wants to be told what to build, what to put where, what color it should be, what tile he should order, or she, and what all do you want included in this home? If they are asking you all of these questions and you have not begun with a clear understanding of what it is you're trying to build and how you're going to get it built, then the contractor is working at a disadvantage, and so are you. Because in terms of ROI, you're not going to get back great ROI from an ill-planned design versus what you would from a very well-planned and well-executed design. I don't know how many times I've walked into a space and thought, oh, you just hired a contractor without any interior design advice, right? Yeah, it's an expensive mistake. An interior designer will help you understand the changes that you're going to be making, the changes that you need to be making, because sometimes you don't need to actually move walls or make big structural changes in order to make a space work. You just need to understand how to unify the old space with what you're doing in the new renovation and find a way to bridge that sort of what I'd call continuity gap between how the old looks and how the new can look. That doesn't necessarily have to involve expensive construction or structural changes to the home. Many years ago, I got a call from a contractor that I had done lots of work with, and he said, listen, I'm working with this family. They've been trying to do it on their own and they're really struggling. Will you come in? And I said, sure, I'll come in and talk to them. So we had a nice meeting and I saw their space. And I also had a look at some of the plans that they had already developed on their own without the benefit of any design advice. They had gone to a big box store, and the big box store had measured their kitchen and then dropped in a bunch of cabinets to fit their kitchen, because that's what they do. They sell boxes. So that's what they will give you. If you have a space, they will fill it with some kind of a kitchen cabinet box. If you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So they reviewed this kitchen plan with me, and I said, well, can we take it away and maybe think about this a little bit? Let's just back up a tiny bit and help me understand how you're going to be living in your home. The one partner in this relationship was a cordon bleu chef one of their kids was a very serious cook. And for fun, this family of 4 or 5 people would all be in the kitchen together cooking. Like, this was what they had grown up doing, and it was their way of connecting and sharing a beautiful experience and creating a beautiful experience for each other. What this new kitchen plan did was make no functional changes to their existing kitchen space, which was full of pain points for these multiple generations of cooks. And it also didn't fulfill the functions of how this family wanted to be living in the space. So I said, let's look at this and figure out what we can do to make this work better, because I was focused not on putting in boxes, but on solving the problems the family was facing in the space. So that's what we ended up doing, was redesigning the kitchen, opening up a wall, creating conversation areas where multiple cooks could be working without bumping into each other constantly and creating safety hazards. But if they had just gone with the design that they had, and the lovely contractor who was going to help them execute and give them whatever they wanted, they would have ended up spending the same amount of money and having such a poor result. An architect's perspective is both on how activities take place within the home and volumes of space, and how one volume of space might open onto or be adjacent to another, as well as what your home looks like from the curb. How does that volume of your structure relate to the surrounding countryside? How does it relate to the other homes on your block? How does it relate to the trees and the curb and the movement of traffic, and giving you a sense of privacy and yet allowing light to penetrate your space and animate all of the interior activities as well? So an architect looks at it from a 360 outdoor inward perspective, and then how human bodies move through the space in a very particular way that good architecture really delivers on. An interior designer thinks about how those bodies move within the space and how we make it comfortable, as well as also thinking about all the functions that take place inside a home and how those functions actually get executed. This is why having both team members working on a larger project makes sense. They are not interchangeable disciplines, they are complementary disciplines. If you are going to make changes to the way your home was built, then you might need to employ a civil engineer, because a civil engineer, from their perspective, is going to come in and look at the space and say, how do I make this structurally sound to protect the family that's living here? And if we're going to move walls, how do we move the walls in such a way that the overall structure is not affected adversely? So this is what I mean by perspectives. So your interior designer looks at it from an interior perspective. Your engineer looks at it from either a building envelope or from a safety perspective, really looking at loads in the home and a whole bunch of other things, because in a larger home, you'll have maybe 6 different engineers working on different aspects of a project. So most construction will require some form of permit, and depending on the scale and the scope of the construction that you are undertaking, that will determine which permit or permits will be required to legally execute your project. A development permit is when you are going to be putting in a new structure or potentially changes as well to an existing structure that affect the municipal bylaw requirements, such as zoning and any restrictions on what type of building you might be able to construct. You also may have to look at what your community will allow, because many community associations have guidelines and restrictions as to what your project can look like, how large it can be. where it needs to be set back from the curb, etc., etc., etc. Building permit is issued later and contains much more detail than the initial development permit, which will deal mostly with the facade and the location and the orientation of the project on the property. Building permit also is much more detailed than your development permit and will contain all of the dimensions and all of the room sizes and shapes and the types of finishes that are being used inside the space. Maybe the color or the exact finish is following later, but it'll be tile here, hardwood here, millwork here, and those locations need to be adhered to once you've submitted for your building permit. All of this takes time, and to develop that full set of building permit drawings means that all the details have to be filled in. Like, there's a whole list of questions that need to be answered for the reviewer of that building permit before they will give you your happy little building permit. And then the big question that everyone asks is, how quickly can we get our permit? And the answer is, we don't know. Because we are very much subject to where we land in the lineup with the municipality that is controlling the issuance of both development permits and building permits. So it's, you know, it's a pray. It's a cross your fingers and pray and submit and hope that things come through fairly quickly. So the bottom line in all of this is just to state, give yourself and your design team lots of lead time to work through all of these steps that need to be done properly and in the proper sequence in order to get you to the day when you can begin construction on your home. There's so many things that need to take place before then, and lots of big, expensive decisions for you to make, and you need to give yourself time to percolate on them and make sure that you are making the right decisions, because renovations are big investments, and you want to make sure that you've given yourself every opportunity to create a successful outcome. So this has really been a Coles Notes version of who does what and how and when. There's so much more detail. If you have further questions, do send us a message and we'd be happy to help clarify that for you. Also hit the subscribe button while you're here. We hope you've delivered, no, I hope I'm delivering value for you here today. And thanks for joining us. It's always fun. Take care. That's it. That's all you're getting. That's all you're getting.